We're talking about affordable home ownership in Ontario. We're going to compare Toronto to some good communities throughout Ontario that are not necessarily places you'd commute to get to Toronto. These are like standalone communities within Ontario. Comparing Toronto to Kingston, to Niagara, to London. And each of these communities are very much standalone communities and they operate on their own. We're going to see how Toronto compares in terms of affordability. They each have commonality in education, they each have commonality in healthcare, but they also have their own unique aspects to each of the cities. You know, London being more manufacturing, Kingston being more military and prison system, and Niagara Falls being tourism and wine. Let's start with Kingston. Average median income, $74,000 a year. London is $75,000 a year, and Niagara Falls is $70,000. So again, that's almost a commonality too. They're very similar income brackets and affordability scale there. We're going to look at what the average house, and when we're looking at an average house, we're looking at houses that are roughly 1,100 square feet, 3 bedroom, 3 bath. So we're basically going to live in the same house in each of these communities, and then we're just going to look at the GDS. What does it cost in terms of where does that ratio fill out for each of these communities? Again, looking at Kingston, the average house, we have a listing right here for Kingston I'm looking at, and you can get a house in Kingston for $579,000, 3 bedroom, 3 bath, beautiful house, like this one even has a pool. So it's a very, very attractive house. I think it would be a very livable house in a nice neighborhood. And if you're looking at the average monthly mortgage payment, we're looking at almost, $3,000 a month. So when you look at the GDS, it works out to about 53.7%. Again, by the definition of, the Canadian definition of affordability, it's expensive based on our affordability scale. So we're not hitting that 35% GDS or that 30% GDS. I think that is a number that seems out of reach even in the most affordable communities within Ontario. Kingston's definitely an affordable community. London, let's look at that. It's actually slightly more expensive than Kingston. That same house in London is about almost $800,000, $789,000. And you're looking at a GDS of around 73%, which is about 2.28 times, 2.3 times greater than our 35% affordability ratio. When you compare that to Kingston, which is only 1.6 times, or almost 1.7 times greater than the affordability ratio of 35% GDS. Let's now look at Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls, I've got a beautiful house here with an in-ground pool, and that's selling very similar price to London, $769,000. The difference here is that the Niagara Falls income is slightly lower than income, so the GDS is going to work out a little worse, and that's going to work out to 77.67%. Again, we're looking at how many times worse this is than the affordability. Again, we want a ratio of 1, so we're about 2.43 times greater than our affordability ratio. So let's, these are what houses go for. At least the GDS is below, is still a percentage. When we look at Toronto, for instance, we have an average income, which is higher, around, and we're talking North York here, we're looking at an average income around $85,000. But your average house is much more expensive. So the same house selling for about $1.6 million. So the income, or the GDS that we're looking at there, is 120, which is 3.76 times the government standard affordability ratio of 35%. What does this mean? We're at the limit of affordability for home ownership in Ontario. I think this is a fact that we have to deal with, and that certain income levels are just going to have to rent. If you're making an average median income or lower, it seems to me that the rental model will be something that you need to look towards to create that affordable rent. And if we're just talking square footage, so the 1,100 square foot, that affordable rent will be somewhere between 2.1 to call it $3.50 per square foot. So these are where we need to look at and where we need to go. So the conclusion here is our market has changed. Incomes hopefully will rise faster than inflation, and maybe the affordability index will come in. I think that will take time. That will also take time because you need to increase supply at such a rate that the value of that supply does not continue to rise at greater than inflation. That's a very long run problem. The short run solution is going to definitely be filled by rental. And we're seeing that trend now. Looking at our business, the majority of our applications right now are rental. Housing sales have really tanked off and there's nothing going on. So the market is solving the problem without any government involvement because it's just the way the world works. However, good policy will help. Reducing the planning costs, reducing the time to bring zoning to market, all these things are steps in the right direction. We're going to continue to look at this problem, and we're going to expand our search. We're going to go across Canada. We're going to go to other communities in Ontario and continue to look at this affordability index in search of a place somewhere in Canada that truly meets these affordability indexes.